This video contains heavy spoilers for the Icebrood Saga story and maybe some spoilers for the previous Living Worlds stories as well, so if you have not played through those, you have been warned. Okay, so we all know, and to a certain degree then can agree on, is that the Icebrood Saga lore-wise was a huge mess. It started off great, then throughout the seasons getting duller, and in the end got butchered completely. So I want to talk about like alternatives which the story could have like turned out, or like how it could have ended, and that could have potentially saved the story. Now, I understand that the devs are working on End of Dragons and they may be short on people working on it, etc. etc. So I will try my best to adhere to the circumstances of the devs, and I also understand that a video like this won't change anything for the story whatsoever, but I just want to talk about how I believe the Icebrood Saga should have turned out, and like I want to give my opinion basically. So let's talk about the characters and their development. Okay, so let's start with Vanguard. Decent character overall, his motives were clear, he was charismatic, clinging onto a false ideology, and he despises anyone that's not Char, obviously a bit racist. And there's nothing much I would add or change, to be honest. I've given an A+ for his character. Next, let's talk about Ryland. Okay, so the thing about Ryland is that he seems like he's just blindly following Vanguard like his pet, because he was raised under the impression that his sire, Redlock, was not loyal and he needs to be better than his father. But then we get scenes where, like during Almora's final moments, where we realize that Ryland may or may not get a redemption arc, as he was starting to think twice when Vanguard ordered him to kill Almora. But then, fast forward to Jormak's awakening, it was revealed that his ambition is even higher than Vanguard's, to be the Dragon's champion, that is, which there was like zero build up to. You can say that his loyalty to Vanguard may be just an act, but in the Forging Steel mission, when he was interacting with his warband, you can tell that he's really loyal, and even his warband members are starting to doubt Vanguard's ideology, but he's still like, I'm a soldier, I will follow the orders of my imperator, you know? That loyalty. So this is what I call a poorly turned out twist, and after turning like to become Jormak's champion, he really just became like another pet. So a B at most for Ryland. What I think should have happened is that they should have more build up to Ryland betraying Vanguard, getting over ambition slowly. People may say that it's because of Cinder's death that pushed him over the edge, but that has nothing to do with Vanguard. And he got his revenge by assassinating Smolder, so kinda irrelevant here. In the end, his motives were unclear, and ultimately he's just some people's pet, whether it's Vanguard or Jormax. Almora, speaking of Almora, when we found her body buried, it was so anticlimactic. We found her sword and we dig up some piles and bam, she's there. Like they just killed her off like that. What they should have done is like, maybe like, of course, have her sword lying there so that we have a sign that she was there. And maybe we see some frozen blood spills on the ground as we enter the cave. And eventually, like after digging through the cave a bit and eventually finding her body. And we don't even have a proper memorial for Almora. Like seriously? Like she's the founder of the Vigil. She has been there since Zaitan. if you are part of the video, you will know her since early on in your personal story. And yet, like, the only thing Renanet gave her was a shrine with her sword, and that's it. No cutscene, no whatsoever, not even any lines from the commander or Javi. Like, that's it, gone. Okay, so next I want to talk about Krisha. Decent character overall as well. She's balanced, she's loyal to Vanguard, but at the same time, she stands by her values and knows what's right and what's wrong. Overall, a well-written character, nothing to change. Her final line to Rylan was so badass, I just love it. Besides the lore bit, I also love her design. She's like a fire spec elementalist due to her Flame Legion bloodline. You know, I like her animation, her attacks, and her like design on her character overall. So an A+ for Krisha. Okay, so next I want to talk about Ridlock. So after watching Wooden Potatoes, he stated that he's slightly disappointed that Ridlock is not very Char-like because he's constantly worrying about Rylan, etc. But to me, I think that's the whole point about Ridlock's character. He's been traveling around with non-Chars, he's been adapting to multiple cultures, he's been exploring the world, and at the same time, at the back of his head, he's constantly reminded that he left his son behind, he left Krisha behind, he left the Char behind to fight the dragons, and he's feeling guilty over it. So it would make sense that he's super concerned about his son, because he knows that he wasn't there for him for all his life. They purposely made Ridlock like this to contrast with Krisha, who is like how a Char is supposed to be. So I think Ridlock in this art is very well written, to be honest. And his interaction with Krisha, the arguments and stuff was always on point, like a married couple. So an A+ for Ridlock in this art. Next, I want to talk about Javi. So Javi, in my opinion, she's quite a weird character, to be honest. Even at the start, when we found her, instantly, she said, "Bram, Vow-breaker, they sent you?" Almost as if she despises Bram so much. And following that, she hardly cusses Bram at all. And sometimes even take his side when Bram mentioned like he's such a failure and stuff, and for retreating from the dragon and stuff. He even consoles Bram at times. So what was the whole point of the first line she ever said? I don't get it. Like, what direction did Renanet want to go with her? It's as if Renanet didn't even know what they want to do with her. Like, what I think should have happened is that they should have just went with one direction. Either she's anti-Bram or she's not, which would have totally made sense either way. Okay, so never mind that. Her character overall was super underwhelming anyways. She has to take the role of head of the vigil, I think, which is actually really important, but we didn't even get like much build up from that after Almora's death and stuff. So, and her connections to her Svanir's bloodline, to Jorah, and everything was not well explored. We get like a few lines, and after the Drakkar fight, she completely vanishes and hardly had any important roles other than being here and there in some occasions. So honestly, Javi is just a heavily wasted character. They should have at least explored more on her bloodline, her internal conflicts that she may have, like different legacies that she may follow. But she was completely butchered. What I think should have happened is that maybe explore more on her childhood. Maybe she was bullied for being a niece to Svanir, or maybe she was an outcast, hence she joined the vigil to fight the dragons prove everyone wrong. You know, there are so many possibilities that could have went with Javi, but they could have like gave her more character, but no, Reinanet just decides to butcher her character. So just a C+. Next, I want to talk about the Steel Warband. Yes, I just thought to put this in because I really like the characters. First, you have Cinder, who is like Ryland's closest friend, a childhood friend of Ryland's, and even a potential love interest as well, but we never got that obviously. Next is Nikabar, I'm not sure how do you pronounce it, an ex-renegade, who is also the only one that seems to realize that Vanguard's plan is stupid and actually thinks logically. Renoa, the engineer of the group, enthusiastic, fun-loving, doesn't really care about politics type. And finally, Vision, the sniper. Not much to say about her, to be honest, but you can tell from her character that she's really efficient, task-focused, and possibly like the hardworking type of the group. And if you think about it, ANET actually gave them like a lot of development with just one Forging Steel missions and a bit more with Drizzlewood Coast. They hardly get enough screen time, and I think there are like a lot of wasted potential here as well, but I really like the characters overall, so I'm gonna give them an A for what they have. So next, Bram. Okay, since we're talking about Bram, I'm gonna talk about all the Norn of the prophecy stuff, as well as like becoming the wolf and the lost spirits as well, because it's all connected. I'm just gonna talk about all this, and in my opinion, it's a complete mess. So Bram has been with us since Living World Season 1, and he has his ups and downs. His character is thoroughly explored. So at the start of the Icebrood Saga, we can see a side of Bram that we haven't really seen before, which is like depressed, guilt-ridden, a bit influenced by Jormak, which is honestly fine. But instead of making the depression worse and worse, and eventually he finds resolve, they just butchered it completely at one point, and everything goes back to normal. And next we have him chasing Wolf and looking for the lost spirits of the wild. Like, what happened to all the build up, all the guilt that Jormax has been feeding on? Like, what happened to all that in the first episode, in the second episode? Like, I don't know what Aina was thinking, honestly. So next, let's talk about the lost spirits of the wild. And okay. So based on some history reading, it was stated that Owl, Wolverine, Ox, and Eagle battled Jormak so that the Norn can migrate to the south. And based on the Icebrood Saga story, we found out from a book that Aesgeir, the legendary Norn who cut off Jormak's tooth, made a deal with Jormak so that Jormak would spare him and the other Norn and let them leave and like travel towards the south, and Jormak would not follow. And we also learned that Jormak has been feeding on Wolverine, Ox, and Eagle's power and corrupting the spirits as well, while Al is believed to be dead. So if you add all these together, it's actually quite simple. Jormak convinced Aesgeir to retreat and surrender so that it can capture the spirits and consume their powers, while the spirits themselves believe that they are sacrificing themselves for the sake of the Norn. It's funny how you can only deduce this after looking through like the wiki, and when it could have been easily explained more in the game. So, the spirits of the wild are embodiments of complex virtues and vices of the animals they represent from the wiki. So I assume this applies for the 3 lost spirits of the wild as well. But until now, I have zero idea on what virtues the lost spirits represent. The conversation between Bram and the lost spirits are basically just the lost spirits talking trash about Bram, like cussing Bram, and Bram says something and the spirit be like, okay, you can have my power. And mind you, they are still corrupted, so it makes zero sense why they would even give or be able to give Bram their powers. Like, it doesn't make sense at all. Okay, so this is what I think should have happened. What should have happened is that we find where Jormak is imprisoning the lost spirits, then we beat a bunch of mobs, and the boss itself is the spirits themselves. Like, maybe like an avatar of the spirits, you know? And afterwards, in order to free the spirits of the corruption, we have to resonate with the spirits based on its virtues. And the character has to be firm beliefs of the virtue itself. So Bram would deal with one, and Bram would answer the question of the spirit and release the spirit from the corruption. Javi would deal with one, and same thing happens, and the commander will deal with the last. And we will have to answer a few questions from the spirits. And of course, just a little bit mechanics. If we answer the questions wrong, we die immediately, and like we have to fight the boss all over again, basically, just for mechanics sake. So I really think that something like that would actually like give a lot more meaning behind the origins of the spirits of the wild, like give some characters to the spirits, gives like the virtues they represent and everything. After the lost spirits have cleansed, then we will meet like with Wolf and the lost spirits together, and Wolf would basically convince the lost spirits to share a piece of their power with Bram so that they can defeat Drakkar. And after defeating Drakkar, Bengar shows up and everything should play out the same. And Bram gets mad, and after Bengar shot the commander, and Bram turns into Wolf and attacks them. This is the part where if they want to give Rylan a redemption arc or set him up to betray Bengar, this is the part where they should show that he was against the idea of shooting the commander. Maybe show him like staring at Bengar with an angry look, especially after Bengar says one char, one dragon, one champion, giving hints that Rylan mean nothing to him but his tool. After that, we meet up with Orin, etc., etc. Then when we talk to Bram about what happened, if you notice, after everyone was done saying things like, "Oh, we're proud of you, we knew you could do it," Bram was still pretty doubtful, as if something's not right when he said, thanks." Then Anet completely ignored this, of course. What they should have done is that they should have built up on this. For example, Bram became the wolf, yes, but he realizes that he was not in control with the form at all. He was all rage and bloodlust, driven by instinct. Then he says that he will never use it again until he finds out how to control it. And I want to remind everyone that this is not a Bram exclusive thing, okay? There are a lot of other Norns, mostly devoted shamans, that can transform into their spirit animal like this. But it is true that not all Norn can do this. So I would just say you need to be like chosen by the spirits to be able to transform. So in order to perfect the form, Bram will dive deep into the history of the spirits, especially Wolf, and seek out the other wolf shamans who can perfectly control their forms. So the shamans would guide him and teach him on basically how to control the form properly. And all this will happen off screen. We just need a few lines for this, of course, since Bram won't be there for episode 3 anyways. So we just you don't even need a whole episode for this. You don't need to follow Bram through all this journey. You can just give him a few lines to build all this up. And it doesn't take much time as well. So I'm gonna skip episode 3 for now and talk about all the Norn of the Prophecy bullcrap. So if everyone remembers, and Anet assumes that everyone don't, obviously, Bram is the Norn of Prophecy, a title made by the Norn to whoever can crack Jormak's teeth and will lead the Norn to killing the dragon. But let me remind you, Bram cracked the tooth with a Jotun fire scroll enchanted on Air's bow. So if I snatch the bow from Bram and shoot the tooth, and I'll become the Norn of the Prophecy. Wow, amazing. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the title itself doesn't make sense. It doesn't make someone the chosen one with some special powers or anything. It's a title that the Norn made up for whoever that will take charge in leading the strike against Jormak. Okay? So, but I don't know for whatever reason, Anet think they should go with the direction of like the chosen one, or like Bram is very special or something like that. And the funny thing is, till this day, it's not even properly explained. Suddenly, Bram is in favor with all the spirits and not just Wolf, and he became like an avatar of all the spirits. And being supposedly the Norn of Prophecy means he can be Primordus' champion. What? Okay, so they really want to go with the direction of Bram being Primis champion. Okay, fine. They tease it in a few interactions, which is good, but they could have just ignored the whole Norn of the Prophecy bullcrap if they went with my direction, with the story with the lost spirits. After saving Owl, Bram proposes an idea to Wolf, Owl, and the 3 lost spirits, which is he will face Primy and become its champion. But he doesn't want to hurt any of his friends. He just wants to defeat Jormak. He just wants to like balance out the like power between Jormak and Primordus, because Jormak suddenly has a boost of power by gaining a champion, which is Rylan. I don't know how that works, but that's what's explained in the story. So in order to prevent himself from hurting his friends, so he asked the spirits to actively guide the little bit of himself left inside after he was transformed. And in order to get close to Primordus, he used maybe like a forbidden technique combining the powers of the Jotun Fire Scroll and his newfound wolf transformation, basically just reusing the well-established lore to build up on more lore and to further solidify the story. You know, this is what storytelling is all about, but no, Anet decides to butcher everything. Okay, so Primy then talks to Bram, learns that Bram wants Jormak dead, and sees that the potential in Bram. And also due to the lack of candidates, you can say, Primy makes Bram his champion. Oh, and I want to put out that Bram at this point has his bow back after Jormak's awakening fight. Like after Vanguard has been converted, Rylan has become the champion, so I feel that that's the point where they should have gave Bram back his bow, honestly. And so Bram won't just be attacking with his fists throughout the entire thing. He would just be using like a Primordus enchanted bow. I don't know, I find the Destroyer Bram using fists very underwhelming. Okay, and using a bow, it would be such a good counterbalance to Rylan, since Rylan is all about ice and greatsword. Then Bram will be all about fire and longbow, you see? Such a good like counter. And when we meet Bram as Primis champion, in the next Dragon Response mission, Bram actually says, "Commander, forgive me," something like that. Show that the spirits played their part in guiding Bram's remaining self. But In the finale, we can see that Bram gets completely consumed by Primordus and is out of control, as what we have in the current finale. What I would add is that the lost spirits contacted Javi, telling her that they can't trace any Bram inside anymore. And Javi tells the commander that, of course, but the commander insists that Bram still has a part of himself inside. Then after the fight, we found Bram finally normal again, but at the edge of dying, and he gives his final farewell to the commander and everyone else, and like everyone gives his farewell to Bram, and Bram afterwards finally dies. Then Javi says that she will spread his legends to like everyone, to the norm, as Bram, the one and only, the norm of the prophecy. Okay, now since we're talking about Bram, let's talk about Primordus. Oh wait, there's nothing to talk about because they completely butchered Primordus like he was nothing. Okay, so Primordus was the first Elder Dragon to awaken, the largest one, the most anticipated Elder Dragon. And now he's dead, without a single line. You must know, like, this is probably the most infuriating, like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe it. Okay, fine. Let's say that ANET really wants Primordus gone by the end of the saga. Let's talk about how they could have made it much better. First of all, at least give him some lines, for God's sake. Since we all like to imagine he's the complete opposite of Jormak, instead of preserving the world, Prime aims to cleanse the world of its inhabitants, cleanse the world of the pollution, and cleanse the conflicts of the world by setting the world ablaze. Once that completes, he will sleep, allowing his magic to spread throughout Tyria, and in a couple of millennia, the world will once again start anew and going back to its primal ages. And the only thing that's standing in between him and his goal is Jormak. We then get a scene where he confronts Jormak, saying that there is no point in preserving the creatures that poison the world. Jormak then tries to persuade Prime to end the cycle, but Prime says, "You know full well your persuasion doesn't work on me." Instead of being indirect and persuasive like Jormak, Prime is direct and works by force. Prime then says, you know you've always been inferior, your powers are nothing compared to mine. Why else would you try to align yourself with an infant, which is Orin obviously, to join your cause? And rely on absorbing the spirit's energy as well, a desperate and yet useless attempt. Like basically like establishing that Primordus is like much more superior than Jormak. Prime then gives his final line, "In reminiscence of our past, submit as you once did, and I will grant you a place in Tyria to some slumber. Stand against me, and I will make a quick end of you, and I will reforge Tyria with your energy myself. The choice is yours." And then, for the first time, Jormak just stays quiet as Primordus left. Since based on the lore book in the game, we know that the dragon sleeps. When a dragon sleeps, it spreads its energy into the world. And I would imagine that each dragon represents a force of nature of the world. Like Modromoth's energy will give rise to all the forests, Primordus will give rise to Tyria's core, and like the earth of the world, Jormak will give rise to like the snowy icy part, and like Bubbles will give rise to the sea, and Kraut will form like the crystal desert. Which puts Zaitan in a weird position because besides Ore, which is like full of undead, Zaitan's influence besides raising the undeads doesn't really play a part in the force of nature of the world. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So my idea is that if Jormek dies and Primordus succeeds, Primordus will wipe everything of Tyria and goes back to sleep and let its energy reform the world. He will use the energy he gathered from Mordremorph to reform the forest, from the Jormek's energy to reform the icy landscape, Bubble's energy to reform the sea, and Krauk's energy to reform the crystal desert. And a few thousands of years, everything will reset, and the cycle will reset. Remember, the whole idea is that Jormek is sick of the cycle, so these all would play a part. These all would like play nicely. All these would play nicely into the story, anyways. And usually, like a few cycles before this, what I'm trying to put out is that the other Elder Dragons would just submit to Primordus and let him do his thing. And afterwards, all the dragons will go back into sleep and let their energy reform the world. But now, since Mordremorph, Krauk, and Zaitan is dead, so Primi will have to do their part in forming the world. And Jormek is like sick of the cycle, so Jormek would like go against like Primi at this point. So I really think all these would like at least give Primordus some character, his motives, and you don't need a full release to establish all these. You just need some voice acting, give like multiple mouths of Primordus in the Dragon's Response mission to put out all this information, and maybe have Vanguard, the voice of Jormek, and maybe a voice of Primordus interact with each other, you know? Like, you don't need full releases for this to establish all this lore, but I think at this point A-Net is just really sick of the Elder Dragons and just wanna be over it. That's why we got what we had. So overall, Icebrood Saga is just huge disappointment if you ask me, lore wise. So that's it for the video. There are obviously much more things to talk about, but I haven't thought about it yet. If I find out that there's more things to talk about for the lore, more things to explore, more things that could have happened, then maybe I'll share like a part 2 of the story. For now, that's it. Thanks for watching and take care.